For us, it's a daily thing.
It's every day, right?
This is Mammoth Daily
We're going to take you inside the locker room
with Mike Fulta.
We want this show to be about the fans, and we want this show to be driven by our Utah Mammoth community.
And Adrian Denny.
Fans can submit what they want to hear us talk about, what they want to hear Utah weigh in on. It's all going to be here.
Here's Mike and AD with you.
Utahns, countrymen, lend me your ears.
Right here on Mammoth Daily.
Welcome into your Thursday expert edition of Mammoth Daily. Nick Olczyk is our guest coming up. Reminder to everyone listening and watching on YouTube that we are migrating over to the Utah Mammoth Team YouTube account. So if you're watching us on our old Mammoth Daily account, we thank you for your patronage, but we don't want anybody left behind. So please continue to make your way over to the Team YouTube account. We know many of you already have. I'm Mike Fulta, along with Adrian Denny. We are your Hockey Night in Utah radio crew. The Mammoth are back home for the start of a 4-game homestand against the Vegas Golden Knights. And AD, Utah picked up 2 out of a possible 4 points on that last road trip. They kind of limped back home after back-to-back overtime losses, but it's a great opportunity against some really good competition coming up here at home to get right in front of the home fans.
Yeah, that Delta Center juice has been so big to start the season, Mike. 5-1-1 at home, and you've had some close games where the crowd has been a factor. Entering the third period against Buffalo, trailing. You go back to the game against the Avs, you were trailed against Boston, had to push it over the top against San Jose and come from behind against Calgary. Just your typical night in the NHL, Mike, with all these close games that we've been talking about, and the juice in the Delta Center's a huge part of it. And Mike, you've been talking about how close the games have been in the National Hockey League this year. Well, NHL PR came out with a tweet on that yesterday, and 81% of the games have been 1-goal games or 2-goal games with an empty net goal, highest rate in NHL history, and 9% more than the previous high. So as the Mammoth are home for 4 straight, fans are the juice. I loved how you and Tyson Nash this week on the Nash cast, going through the first quarter of the season, talked about how big the last change is at home when you get to pick who you're matching up with, starting with the beginning of the game, and how huge that is. And now Utah's got 4 games over the next 7 nights at Delta Center to get rolling, headed into Thanksgiving.
We're going to preview the Vegas Golden Knights, who Utah will see twice during this homestand. So we'll see Vegas a couple of times in short succession. But before we really look ahead to tonight, Adrian, I kind of wanted to go off a little here because I keep seeing a lot of negativity. I see a lot of headlines that I don't agree with. And it just reminded me, AD, you know what I love? I grew up on this, and you know what I absolutely love? I love meat and potatoes. That is a homemade mashed potato recipe. I got some seasoned chicken right here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see how delicious it is. We are meat and potatoes guys, AD. We get the puck in deep. We're running guys in the corner. We're going through the body. We are meat and potatoes guys. We are not clickbait guys. If you are coming here to Mammoth Daily for a headline, you are in the wrong place. We are here to talk about the team. And I know people are frustrated with the group having lost 8 of its last 10. It doesn't feel good. The way Utah has lost some games recently, it's been frustrating. And as fans, it's good to feel that frustration that tells you have passion. But last year through 20 games, you know where we were? We were a game below 500, and we had just lost 3 in a row. Now Utah's on the flip side of that. There's still a couple games above 500 and in a much better spot. And the positive spin on this, and I know there's a little asterisk because it's been some frustrating losses, but the positive spin on this is Utah has points in, 4 straight games now, going back through the overtime losses and the win against Buffalo. My mom is a teacher. We just had the mom's trip, Adrian, with all the Mammoth moms on the road trip to California. My mom is a teacher, and when you have a student who's a B student, like you were an A student, Adrian, I was at times an A student. When you have a B student, let's say it's me. When you have me, a B student, and all of a sudden that student turns in a test, you get the Scantron back, and as a teacher, you look at it and you say, wow, they got everything right. You say, great job. You're excited that that student got it right. And then a month later, when that student turns in, that same B student turns in a test that's a C+, do you call the parents and ask if the student is playing too many video games? No, this is a B student. We celebrate the A's, but we know that over a larger sample size, the body of work is going to keep producing a B at the end of the year for this student as long as the study habits don't change. Mammoth didn't enter the year as favorites to win the Cup. Go look at the Vegas sportsbooks. Utah won 7 in a row and turned in an A+ for the month of October. November has been a C so far. And guess what? That puts us right where we thought we'd be. Is there work to do? Absolutely. Are there study habits to adjust? You betcha. But let's keep everything in perspective as we continue to feel the pangs of frustration with this team.
I heard Bill Armstrong earlier yesterday on our flagship station, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, on his weekly visit with Hans and Scotty G. And they asked him, Bill, how many points does it take to make the playoffs? And Bill said 92 to 96 and 100 if you want your GM to sleep well at night. Through 20 games, the Mammoth, with 13 to 20 games on the road, and the context from last year, 11 of the first 20 were on the road. The Mammoth right now are at a 94.3 point pace through 20 games, which has you right in the middle of that 92 to 96 points, and exactly where we thought we'd be in this stretch, or where we hoped to be with the way that this schedule laid out. And I did the math, and 94.3 points there, Mike, at 10-7-3. Bear said it yesterday. Bill said it on the radio. You said it to start the show. 1-0-3 in the last 4. And those games, the first one was decided by something we'll never see again. A goal kicked in, and a player gets a foul tip on it, on his stick, and it goes in. He played the puck by rule. Good goal. Anaheim, 5 seconds left, and puck squirts free, goes into the back of the net. All credit to Anaheim. The game against San Jose, we had the goaltender interference call I think we all disagreed with, but Yaroslav Askarov should have stopped the shot that Peterka fired in. Ole Mata raced down an icing right before that disallowed. There's just so many little things in a game. And if that goal for Anaheim scored with 7 minutes left in the game, we're not magnifying it how we were.
This is life. This is life in the big leagues, guys. Like you're gonna have some tough stretches. Lord knows Utah had some tough stretches last year, and this is a stretch where does Utah need to get better, and do they need to take strides? Yes, but let's not put them 6 feet under in the month of November when the team has a winning record. You know what I mean? And it's all the goalpost shifting, right? Like Utah wins 7 in a row, and people think they're never going to lose again. Well, look at us now. Here we go. So, AD, let's. I'm glad we had this talk. I'm glad we laid down on the couch. Got our notepad out as therapists and got to have this conversation.
The great thing about Mammoth Daily, Mike, is there's not usually, we're open books here. You get what's on our mind. The morning afters from you are coming with straight, raw emotion. I'm driving home after a game, processing it all over again after Hockey Night in Utah post game. And by the time I get home, I've got a completely fresh show to roll out than was our post game after processing it. You're getting us in the heat of the moment. And I'll be honest, Mike, might be some math errors early in those mornings. I
Not for you.
apologize
You're an
in
A
advance.
student.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's funny you bring up the morning afters. I was so glad that Nick took the morning after, that he kind of had a lion's share of the oratory in our last morning after the San Jose game, because I already had like a very emotional morning after the Anaheim game. I'm like, oh God, I can't be a mess after this again.
You had a physical reaction to the Anaheim game,
Yeah.
Mike.
I broke out in hives. No, I felt it in my soul, and that's the thing. Like, we're team employees, Adrian, but we're fans. We're fans of the team too. Like, we know these guys, and we want them to win, and like it hurts us when we don't. And so we're not just waving pom poms for the team. Like, we believe what we say. But before we ramble on too long here, let's get to Vegas. Let's talk about the Golden Knights. Let's get to the task at hand, which is the first of a 4-game homestand tonight, back at Delta Center. AD, this Vegas team has kind of been up and down to start the year. Right now, they're in second in the Pacific Division with 24 points. That's one more point in one less game than what Utah has. They were unbeaten in regulation through their first 7. They've been about 500 since, but they've also been dealing with a lot of key injuries, Adrian. They're getting sub 500 goaltending right now, or I should say bottom half goaltending without Aiden Hill. They also don't have Mark Stone, who does so much for them. Don't have William Karlsson in the lineup, and Noah Hannafin missed some time as well. So this is a team that's kind of hovering a little bit in the Pacific Division compared to what we're used to out of them. But I'm not going to be too worried about a Vegas team that's gone to the playoffs 7 out of 8 years and has never had a losing record.
Mike, you look at the Golden Knights, and you got the 5-0-2 start since they went 4-4-4. They're 9-4-6. Only 3 non-wins out of their 10 have been by more than a goal. When they're not winning, the games have been close. 5th best power play in the National Hockey League. I think that is going to be a big factor. I think Utah is going to have to get a power play goal here in the contest tonight, because Vegas and Utah are about even 5-on-5. Utah and Vegas, just about a 1-to-1 ratio, 5-on-5. Vegas is 1.06 to 1 in goals for against. Utah's 1.05. Vegas had 2 power play goals to beat the Rangers 3-2 on Tuesday. That was the difference in the game. So I think special teams for the Mammoth, it would be a great game to get things going there as far as the 5-on-4 goes.
Yeah, that's a great point. You mentioned the 5-on-5 numbers. A lot of the numbers between Utah and Vegas are actually very similar. You look at their record, you look at goals for, goals against, and on down the list. Maybe some struggling goaltending as well in there for both sides. So there's a lot of similarities between these two groups. Adrian, you mentioned how a lot of their losses, or their non-wins, if you count their extra time losses, have been close. They have points in 4 straight, but look at the teams that they've lost to in regulation. They have 4 regulation losses. They've lost to the defending Stanley Cup champions twice. They've lost to Tampa Bay and Colorado, all teams that have won the Stanley Cup with their current core within the last 5 years. So their losses have come against very good teams. And even though I think Vegas is a team that maybe not everybody is talking as much about right now, it's still a group that should be considered among the elite in the Western Conference.
Mitch Marner, 21 points in 19 games. That's a huge addition to the team. And for me, Mike, Vegas is the same as Edmonton. You know, they might stumble a little bit in October early on, but when you face them, you know you're facing the Vegas Golden Knights, regardless of what their record is. And with the last 7 games not losing in regulation, it's pretty good. They're a point back at Anaheim for first place in the Pacific. Last year against Vegas, Utah played them pretty good, Mike. And all 3 games were in November. So didn't see him in the second half of the year. And in November, Utah was still kind of coming along. 1-0-2 against the Golden Knights. Led all 3 games 2-0. Lost 2 in overtime. Utah did play well. We all remember the first ever team shutout. Jackson Stauber and the big game from Nick Schmaltz at the Fortress the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Utah won 6-0. So Utah played them well. It was a small sample size of hockey in November. And lo and behold, we're going to see the Golden Knights again twice in 5 nights starting this evening.
Vegas is that team that is not going to panic if they are down, and we saw this exemplified with Utah unable to maintain those leads. Vegas is going to continue to play their game, and they have enough poise as a group. A lot of their core has been in many deep playoff runs over the last several years, ever since the team came into existence, really. But even when they're down, this group has poise, and they're a team that you have to bury, Adrian, as is evident by the blown leads last year by Utah. If Utah takes a lead, you have to keep pushing to get that next goal because the Knights are coming. And if you sit back and try and play prevent, they're going to make you pay, and that's a little bit of what happened last year.
Might be the best November rivalry of all time in the National Hockey League, Mike, with 3 games last year and 2 this season. All 3 games had a fight. Ian Cole, Lawson Krause, Jack McBain, all dropping the gloves against Vegas. And again, if we ever played them in anything but November, might be able to space out a little bit of a rivalry. They are in the Pacific Division. We are in the Central Division, so that's why we see them only 3 times a year. But a lot of November action, a lot of cornucopias when these 2 teams meet.
Yeah, nice inclusion of cornucopia. I remember these games being very contentious, Adrian, and I think a lot of games against Vegas have that ability to, because for a long time the Knights have had players who play a physical style and are not afraid to stand up for their teammates. But like I remember the games at Delta Center and at the Fortress last year, where there's a lot of the opposite color in the crowd. There's a lot of mountain blue when we go to Vegas, just a couple hours away, and there's a decent amount of Knights fans that were cheering for the Golden Knights before the Mammoth bloomed into existence here in Utah. So I think that adds a little bit to it as well. But Vegas and Colorado, both equidistant by flight, but not as the car drives, Adrian. 2 very different travels, or 2 very different journeys on the highway, even though they're both a similar amount of distance as the crow flies.
Little more direct route if you're driving to Vegas. You don't have to go through Wyoming to get there. So that's a plus, because if you drive through Wyoming to get to Colorado, you never know when the freeway is going to be closed. It's a 50-50 situation in the fall and winter.
I believe it's 357 miles, both to Denver and to the Fortress. That might not even be the case. That might actually be to Ball Arena and then to T-Mobile Arena. We were trying to figure this out last year. It was very difficult to tell exactly like which one is closer, the Avalanche or the Golden Knights, but they're both close. And that should be fun tonight. It'll be good to be back at home, where Utah's been pretty good this year.
Yeah, and one more thing, Mike, about the route to Vegas.
Yeah.
I used to take that route all the time professionally as the Grizzlies were going to take on the Las Vegas Wranglers in the
Had to
ECHL.
put that in. Put that in.
Used to take it all the time for work. There was an inaccurate road sign, and it was like just south of Provo. It'd say 370 miles to Vegas, and you go 20 miles up the road and it says 425 miles to Vegas. And I think they finally got things situated there, but it was like, all right, 370 miles to Vegas. We're going to be there by 4:30. And no, you weren't.
Oh, come on, Department of Transportation. You're misleading the Grizzlies here.
Federal signage, Mike, I think it was.
All right, everybody. Great first period here to start your Thursday Expert Edition. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to the expert. We talk with Nick Olczyk. We talk about changing up the lines. We talk about life down near the benches, because Nick Olczyk on TV, when we're at home, he is down in between the 2 benches. He is in section 0.5. He has his own section there in between the two teams. He sees a lot, he hears a lot, and he has great insight for us as to life down along the benches and what it looks like when Utah is changing, when they're changing lines. He talks a little bit about delay of game, which is unfortunately relevant for the Mammoth here this week. But let's get to our Thursday expert and the first of a 3-part series with Nick Olczyk.
Let's hear from the experts.
At long last, we have received permission from his agent to bring on Nick Olczyk into our Thursday expert show. Nick, we're glad that our check finally cleared. Thank you for making an appearance with us. We're excited to get into some expert analysis regarding the Utah Mammoth. But thanks for joining us, buddy.
I am also very glad that check cleared, Mikey, because I've got to pay for that bone-in ribeye somehow for dinner tonight. So thank you guys for having me on. You guys always do such an incredible job, and you and AD keeping the fans in the loop and keeping everybody entertained. Even though from time to time I do get a little angry at what you guys have to say.
Not the only one, Nick. Not the only one. Hey, let's talk about running the bench today, because we saw a situation with the Mammoth last week where down 2-1, start the third period, and all of a sudden we see a new forward line out there, Lawson Krause with Jack McBain and JJ Peterka. And Lawson told Mike and I after the game that they didn't hear about it until Bear goes, Krauser, Boehner, JJ. So we thought it'd be fun to bring you on and just talk about the, Grand Central Station that is a player's bench during the course of a hockey game with the coaches and the players and the equipment managers in the athletic trainers. So do you want to start with just the line changes and changing up the D and how that goes and players coming off and how do they know and where do they go and who's replacing them and all that stuff that looks so seamless and so easy when we're watching a game from the top of section 6-7 with me and Mike.
And I heard that, AD. That was for the kids out there, right? I know, But it's such an integral part of the game, and hopefully we do get a chance to talk about that line change in particular, because I definitely got a lot of thoughts on that in terms of JJ going and joining Jack and Lawson. But I think for the beginner part of understanding line changes, the most important thing is when you're on the bench, you're not just watching what's going on. There's communication from head coach Andre Tourigny, and for the defensemen, it's assistant coach Mario Duhamel, of letting the players on the bench know who's going next. And then the next step of that is the players on the bench making it very clear with one another who they have. Everybody knows that Clayton Keller is a left winger. Everybody knows that Logan Cooley is a center. But if Barrett Hayton's going out next, he's letting everybody know, I got Cools. I got 92. Cools my guy. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you don't know who's going. You don't know who has who. And that's where you get into some trouble with too many men on the ice penalties. Because some people sit there and go, well, there's three forwards on the ice. There's three guys getting ready to go. How could you possibly have too many men on the ice penalty? Sometimes the heat of battle, maybe the players think they hear the coach, or the coach thinks that the players know who's going. And then that's where you run into issues of too many men on the ice penalties when two guys jump. So it's so important to communicate, and I would even say over-communicate, as far as not just from the coaches letting everybody know who's going next, but the players letting all the other players know who they have on the ice. There's a big rabbit hole here of different situations during the game. A penalty's called, the referee's arm goes up, the goalie goes to the bench if the play is away from your zone. And then another player jumps on the ice because of the delayed penalty. more times than not, it's the next center of the next line that's going to go out there. Sometimes it's your best player that you have still on the bench, and a lot of times the coach will let everybody know which player in that case is going. But I think from a 30,000-foot perspective of line changes, you have to communicate, and you have to do it sometimes overboard, because that's the only way to make sure that everybody knows who everybody has and who's going out on the ice, to avoid, as we've talked about, those too many men on the ice penalties, which oftentimes are backbreakers.
I do want to get to more talk about the bench, because that's the whole point of the segment, but I can tell you're fired up about the new combination of J.J. Peterka, Lawson Krause, and Jack McBain. So I want to allow you a little runway to give us your thoughts on that.
Oh, very sweet of you, Mikey. Thank you. Thank you very much for my allowance, my monthly allowance with you. I just wanted to touch on the point that as a coach, if you want to stick around in this league for a long time, and I had the pleasure of learning a lot from my dad, who was the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins back in the early 2000s for a couple of years, coaching the likes of Sidney Crosby and Mario Lemieux and great players like that. If you want to be a good coach, not only do you have to understand your players and know when to push buttons, but you also have to have a feel on the bench of who's going and who's not. And that's not to say that every game when a line's having a tough night that you put everything in a blender and you switch them up. Sometimes you got to allow certain combinations of three forwards to work through some struggles. But I just felt that the line change that head coach Andre Tourigny made against the Buffalo Sabres in that big home win, he knew that breaking up that third line could be a bad idea, because that was one of the lines, and by one of the lines, I mean the line that was the best line over the prior 6 or 7 games that the team had. So to break up a line that's going so good, that could be devastating to the group overall and the way that the play was flowing for them. But he also knew that lately, been a battle for J.J. Peterka. We know the great skill set he has, but everybody goes through a tough time to create offense. So you take J.J. off the line that he was on with Hayton and Gunther. You put him with McBain and Krause, who play a much more straight-ahead style, and you think, okay, maybe that could unlock J.J. Maybe with those guys forechecking and getting the puck into his hands, probably going to have a little bit more time and create a little bit more space out there with the puck. So that's all credit in the world to Andre Tourigny and his staff for recognizing, yeah, maybe we don't want to break up the line that's been great, but we also got to get other guys going. And who knows, maybe that could be a line that goes on to have a really nice stretch. But just that subtle little change, I think, was really key to unlocking what Utah was able to do in that game against Buffalo, and to try to get a little bit more offense going throughout the entirety of the forward group.
Nick, when it comes to how long a shift is, tell us how long it typically is and what the changing process is like for the guys on the ice. When do they want to get off, and the players hopping on for them?
Yeah, I would say 45 to a minute. That's the typical shift length that you're looking at. The better players, and by the better players, I mean the guys that get paid a lot to score a lot, they're probably more towards that minute. Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, you look up their average shift lengths, they're probably more in the 50, 55 a minute, maybe just over a minute. A lot of it is contextual. A lot of it depends on the game. They're going to be out there for a lot longer on the power play. If they win the faceoff and they stay in the zone for a minute 20, a minute 30, a minute 40, that's going to be an overly extended shift as well. But they're not taxing as much energy because it's not like they're skating all over the ice. They're mainly just staying in the offensive zone. But for most hockey players, traditionally, that shift length is in that 45-second to a minute range. And there's something so special about hockey that it is a total body workout, and you're expending 100% energy every shift. And when you're out there for 45 seconds, just imagine running your heart out on a treadmill for 45 seconds straight, and then tell me how you're feeling. You're probably pretty gassed. You're probably maybe just a little bit tired. Maybe not you, AD, because you're in great shape, and I know you really enjoy your fair share of hikes and cardiovascular activities. But with that being said, all these things that these guys have to worry about from shift by shift, it's a lot. Even the guys that are the most conditioned. So to hammer it home, yeah, most guys between 45 seconds and a minute. But sometimes a little bit extended based on if they're down maybe late in the game, they're going to stay out there a little bit longer. An extended power play, same can be said for that as well.
We see sometimes emotional outbursts from coaches on benches, giving it to players, or sometimes we see coaches just standing there and you're wondering, okay, is there a message to the team here? How much communication with Utah's coaching staff is there, and how much of that communication is motivational? How much of it is strategic, and any other categories that might need to be filled out for the different ways that the coaches are communicating with the players, and to that extent, training staff and whoever else might be involved.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, Mikey, because I have such an honor and a pleasure to be between the benches for our broadcasts at home, and just being in the action of the players on either bench, the line changes, the communication, and yeah, sometimes the communication between benches, and maybe a mixture of English and profanity. And I got to be heavy on my mute button so we don't get FCC fines on the TV side. But the cool thing is that there's so many moving parts going on a bench throughout the course of a hockey game. I love that you mentioned the trainers, Mikey. I want to start there because those are the guys that never get enough credit, the most overworked and underpaid parts of a hockey team, but are vital. It's a hockey player's lifeline to have both medical trainers and equipment trainers. And to my right is where the Utah bench is for home games. And oftentimes when a player, maybe they step on a stick, maybe they fall and their skate hits the boards and they need a new blade, they need new steel, and they're going back to the bench and they're yelling, "Steel, steel." And the first guy to come running with the steel is one of the equipment men, Ryan Andrus. And he is right there to pull that little trigger on the underside of the blade, the underside of the toque, which is the kind of the middle piece between the boot. You've got the toque, and then you've got the blade being the blade holder. And Ryan is right there to pull that trigger. The blade falls out. He's got a new one, fresh set of steel there, pops it right in, and the guy's ready to go like a well-designed and operated pit stop for those that enjoy F1 or NASCAR. It's really no different. And that is such a pivotal part to make sure that these guys are feeling and operating at their very, very best, because you never know when that next shift could be the difference in a game for better or for worse. Now, from the players' point of view, we've talked a lot about the communication. We've talked a lot about the coaches and their communication to the players. But the point you bring up, Mikey, about the words from coaches to players, and I think that ties in well to the last answer, in that you got to have a feel. If coaches consistently have outbursts and they, for a hockey term, they rip their players, you do that too much, you lose the guys. Because every time you do it, the message becomes a little bit less intense, It's kind of like maybe sometimes the loudest voice in the room really maybe isn't the most powerful voice in the room. So as a coach, I think you have to pick your spots. And I thought that 5-2 win over the Buffalo Sabres, a turning point in that game was the first TV timeout of the second period. Utah wasn't playing nearly as hard as they needed to in their D zone, turning pucks over. Karel Vejmelka had to make a couple of massive saves to bail them out. You get to that first TV timeout, and Andre Tourigny had a one-way conversation with his team. He called them in, and for any parents out there that have had those sort of conversations with your kids, it's no different. You're not mad, maybe you are sometimes, but you're trying to redirect their focus and their energy. And when I had a chance to ask Andre Tourigny a question at a press conference, I didn't necessarily ask him what was said. I asked him, how did he think his team responded? And he gave a wonderful answer. And that answer was along the lines of, he saw fire in the eyes of his players. It wasn't tail between your legs, feeling bad for themselves. They were down 2-0. People come back and teams come back from 2-0 deficits all the time. But you can't do that every game when there are stretches that are not going your way, when you face adversity. You can't rip your guys and scream and yell. So I just thought that you probably get 3, maybe 4 of those a year before hockey players kind of tune it out. And that's why I felt like Andre Tourigny, he read the room, he read the state of the game, and it was so perfectly done because the guys responded in a huge way from that. So is it all rah-rah? No. Is it all screaming and yelling and maybe not the most positive way? No, you have to find a balance, but that's why there is a great separator between the coaches that are great coaches, successful coaches, and maybe guys that wear out their welcome, so to speak, more times than not.
Nick, thanks for joining us on this Thursday Expert, telling us how to run the bench. If we gave a fan an experience to go out there, would you call it chaotic? Would you say it's hard to follow, sensory overload for the first time if you step out on a bench in an NHL game?
I would say let's please make sure that we give them a helmet, some gloves, and some hockey pants to protect them from being hit. And maybe sometimes, depending on the age of that wonderful fan, maybe some earplugs and earmuffs as well, because we don't want anybody picking up any sort of language that they shouldn't be learning until they're at least 18 years old. But it is always an incredible atmosphere, especially when those games get a little bit spicy. But it's such an honor to be down there between the benches. It's a very unique perspective. And guys, just lastly, really quick, how I approach those games in terms of my prep, because it's very different preparing for games when I'm between the benches versus maybe when I'm calling a game with Mikey Folter or as an analyst with Matty McConnell, if it's just us working on the road. Like down there between the benches, as a broadcaster there, your job is to pick up things that nobody else in the building can. So I don't necessarily prep storylines and stats and all that type of stuff that maybe I would if I was a lead analyst on a show. I'm making sure that I can identify every single player, of course, the pronunciations of their names. So that way I don't need to look down at my roster sheet and say, oh, who was that? Because things happen so fast in hockey, especially when you're down there. So my role and my job is to pick up little things. Was there a conversation between one player on one team, one player on another team during a TV timeout? And then 2 minutes later, they fight. It's those types of things that maybe other people don't recognize, they don't see. Or, for example, something I love, when a player is skating up the ice really fast and the bench is screaming, 2, 2, 2, 2 on 1, 3 on 2, odd man, something along those lines, to where the bench is being the eyes and the ears of players for their team out on the ice. Or maybe a guy's got a forechecker barreling down on him and they're letting him know, you got one on, one on. Those types of things that the bench is helping the guys out on the ice that really nobody else can see and hear. It's such a pleasure to see not only how fast the game is, but all the little inner workings that go on down there. It's always a blast.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us here on this Thursday Expert Series. Can't wait till next week, and can't wait because coming up, we're going to get more into you being between the benches for every home game that you are. We're going to go even deeper. Thanks again, Nick.
Go deep, AD. I love it, and looking forward to sharing some more information. AD looking great, and Mikey, how about that flavor saver you got there? Very nice, looking very nice, looking
Movember,
very good.
baby, Movember. Thanks, Diggy.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
This is Mammoth Daily.
A big thank you to Nick for jumping on with us and recording that segment. We schedule those for like 10 minutes. That's what we tell people, Adrian, but Nick always has a lot to say, and we will take every word of his to heart. So appreciate Nick for a great chat on his experience down near the benches. But AD, tomorrow is our Friday free-for-all. Tonight, we're at home back at the Delta Center, and we had a great experience last time we tried this, where we had people come up and record things with us. We're going to do that again here for our Thursday well, on Thursday, but for our Friday free-for-all. Cannot wait to see everybody back at the top of Section 7.
Yeah, come Section 7. It's on the Section 6-7 side for your, directions when you come in. Just to the right, the Chick-fil-A. Come see us. Mike is going to set up the tripod with the ring light, I think, tonight, Mike.
Yep.
If you want to come interview us.
Try. What's that?
Yeah, we will try. We may, if you stop by and see us, we may ask you to help us set up our tripod. So beware, we might put you to work. But yeah, come see us. Come interview us. We'll give you the mic. You can talk to us. We can interview you. Just come say hi, and we'll work it out. We'll turn it around and have it all on the Friday free for all coming up tomorrow.
Josh, our good friend and listener, has already said that he has a mind melder for both of us, Adrian, interviewing us wise. So can't wait for that, and can't wait to say hi to everybody back at the Delta Center where Utah takes on Vegas tonight. But AD, we also had a bunch of fans on the road with us out in California. It wasn't just the moms that came along for the trip to Anaheim and to San Jose. We had a bunch of the herd, a bunch of Mammoth Nation out there as well. I see some familiar faces. I see the Reynolds. Well, I saw in the airport, by the way, the Johnsons. That's Joanne and Michael right there. They were catcalling us as we walked in. There's our friend Brock Roberts, who looks like he's at Disneyland. He's got the ears on. Shout out to the Mammoth moms. Great sign at that game behind the Mammoth bench in Anaheim. And a lot of Mountain Blue out in California, AD.
Yeah, great to see the folks making the trip. How great are people like that take weekdays off to go on a road trip with the team? Monday and Tuesday, that was their own paid vacation that they were leveraging, Mike, to come see us. And, in both Anaheim and San Jose, huge presence of Salt White, Mountain Blue, and Rock Black, and they were into it. And right behind the bench, Mike, did you see it? I don't have a picture, but our photographer, who is right next to me and you during the games, was right there behind Bear. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Our videographer, who's to the left of me and you during home games, was right there. Behind
Jen.
Yeah, Jen. Yeah.
Jen, yeah, she works the reverse camera.
Yeah.
Over on the bench side. She's right next to us all the time. And so she was at the game too, huh?
Yeah, she was right behind Bear.
Wow. All right. Shout out Jen, who does a great job for our TV crew. For those of you who don't know, reverse angle just means that it's facing the opposite direction of the way you're watching TV. So they use that camera a lot for replays and things like that. But Jen does a great job. She's fun to hang out with at intermissions, and always has an encouraging word post game as well. Shout out to our great friend Jen. That's outstanding. AD, I will tell you, like, I'm not kidding. I'm seeing a lot. I don't say a lot more. I'm seeing more Mountain Blue when we go on the road this year. Like, you notice it at opposing arenas during warmups. Everybody's along the bench. But there's a lot of Mammoth jerseys around the glass during warmups. And there's been some surprising spots too. Like, we saw a lot in California. That's not as surprising. But like, there was a lot in Ottawa. There was one other, like, it might have been Montreal or Winnipeg or something like that. But there's another kind of weird location that I didn't expect to see a lot of Mammoth fans, but there you go.
Yeah, hockey jerseys are the best. The fans represent, and our fans are always there. They're always loud. They're always supportive. They always post it on social, so we can distribute it even more.
Yeah, and another shout out to the Reynolds, who I got to see, the parents of Broadcast Bub, our good friend Dallas. And Dallas did not make the trip, guessing he had school, but I got to see the Reynolds. Yeah. Well, I would have signed his release form, but I don't know how far that would have gone with the admissions or with the attendance office. But the Reynolds were out at our gate. We were, where was this, in Anaheim or San Jose? We were I think we were at John Wayne Airport boarding a flight, and there they were saying hi to us. And it's always great to see everybody on the road. So if you see, we're kind of hard to miss because we have all this branded gear. If you see any of that walking around a road city, please do say hi.
And in Delta Center tonight, stop by Section 6-7. We'll put you on Mammoth Daily in our Friday Free For All. Just come talk to us. We can play trivia. We can play charades. We can just chat. Give us a hot take. Come see us tonight, Section 6-7. We're back on our Friday Free For All. Coming up tomorrow, we'll recap the game. Mike's Morning After, our local hockey roundup. Some more great stuff to hit coming up. Have a good rest of your Thursday, everybody, right here on Mammoth Daily.